Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Austin, also known as Amerikano sometimes. I'm one of the event organizers for the Con of Heroes. Today we are super lucky to have the three current developers of Marvel Champions, the Living Card Game, with us. We're going to ask them some questions. So let's get So I'm going to give them each the opportunity to have a mic, each going to give an opportunity to introduce themselves and a little bit of their design background. So then when that can give some context to their question, their answers that they're going to give would be super hard questions. So take it away.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Awesome. I'm Tony Fanchi. I'm the lead developer for Marvel Champions. My history in design with Marvel Champions is I was the lead designer on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box and its accompanying wave. The Next Evolution box and its wave, along with Michael Boggs, and the Mojo Mania scenario pack. Prior to joining the Marvel Champions team, I designed board games for the most part. I was the lead designer on the Unfathomable board game and co-designed the Star Wars Outer Rim game with Corey Knitska.
Hi, I'm Aaron Haltom. I have been working at FFG 7 years now. I worked on Keyforge and Star Wars Unlimited and Star Wars Destiny. And for Champions, I worked on Rocket and Groot and Galaxy's Most Wanted. Thank you. Yes. And then did initial design for War Machine, Valkyrie. I named the Mad Titan Shadow Box. That's my claim to fame.
I'm, despite appearances, I'm not Dave Grohl. I'm Frank Brooks. I've been at the Fantasy Flight here for 12 years. I started on X-Wing, where I cut my teeth on that. I started on Wave 3.5 all the way through the first edition and was lead designer on second edition. I also did Fury of Dracula, third edition. I did, oh boy. I've done a bunch of other stuff too. I've worked on Cosmic Encounter Odyssey and Game of Thrones Betwixt. But yeah, all of my stuff for this game has not been announced yet. So I've made 4 heroes, but yeah, I'm very excited to talk about my characters once they're been announced. But I will obviously have been spending some time on this game and have lots to say about it still.
All right, everybody, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. We're gonna roll with it.
Yeah.
All right, so I got some questions here. Maybe pass the mic back and forth if you feel like you can answer it. If you can't, don't feel obliged. But got a quick. The first question here is: with the release of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., how have you felt about the reception to this expansion, and the campaign specifically? Mm-hmm. And is there any part of the community reaction that has surprised you?
Yeah, I've been very pleased, obviously, with the reception to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was a labor of love. I was very happy with the way it turned out and everybody's responses so far. I've been very happy that everybody has been enjoying the campaign. I wanted to do something very different with the campaign in this box and really built it into that final scenario. And so I hope that you have all enjoyed the way that those work together. Probably the one thing that wasn't really a surprise, but was a thing that I was thinking might be the case, was the reception to the Pericles. So that was a card that was probably the hardest of the big helicarriers to design for Maria Hill, just because we wanted it to be something that is impactful, that you would want to pay 6 for to play outside of Maria without making it something that breaks under Maria. And so we did a whole bunch of iterations on that helicarrier design. It ended up maybe a little strong for solo play, particularly. She can shut down the villain every turn. But I think We'd rather push the boundaries to exciting cards that people are going to want to play, and sometimes it'll come out a little over the top.
Right on.
You guys have any thoughts you want to share?
Sure. If the microphone holds up. Okay.
I
So
think just project.
yeah, I'll just put it. So I wasn't working on the line during Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I came back on about a year ago. So I looked in the files and saw that stuff before the rest of the world, before everyone got to see it. But I didn't get to play test it or anything. But so my first impression of it was, this is all so cool, and also that Maria Hill can do insane things with these helicarriers. I was like, this seems nuts. I'm sure there's like my combo brain immediately started spinning when I saw Maria. And once I got into the world, that's true. That the proof correct. Yeah, theory confirmed.
Sure. Yeah, and what I want to say is I came on the line kind of towards the end of the design, and so my main contribution, I guess, if you can even say that, was talking through the how the evidence works with Tony. Since that sort of fun conclusion, I really liked the idea that you want to play that last scenario as part of the campaign because you've been building up to this moment and you get that final big reveal. So I was really proud with how Tony was able to come up with a really satisfying way that you can wrap up the scenario and you can play it on its own as well. And that was its own little trick to figure out.
Yeah, I will say we tried a whole bunch of different ways for that the evidence could work. There was a point at which I had a whole logic mini game that involved the evidence, but I found that it was just distracting too much from the Marvel Champions, and so I went with the more simple clue style mechanism that basically everybody will be familiar with, just so you can focus more on your Marvel Champions play and less on the logic puzzle of it all.
Awesome. Thank you. So this one I think Tony's probably answered this a lot, so we'll get some answers from Aaron and Frank here, but when it comes to designing both heroes and villains, do you all start with an idea for the mechanic and find the character to match it without revealing anything? You can if you want.
Sure.
Or do you start with the actual character and find a way to tie in the mechanic to that character?
Sure. First of all.
Okay, sure. Yeah, it can be either. It could be either. There's the top-down approach sort of is very popular with Champions because it's such a thematic game. Marvel has such evocative characters. They all have like their thing. They're not just like well-rounded three-dimensional human beings. They're like, I'm fire guy. I do fire stuff. So of course there's a strong impetus to make top-down designs for like, okay, what's the fire deck all about? So yeah, I think hero designs and villain designs both are centered around the character. They tend to be very top-down of like thematically, what's the way to do the most justice to this character as possible. I'll let you talk about bottom up, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I think for aspect design, it's a space where we're more likely to go with a bottom up design where we say, hey, like temporary is a cool thing. Like, how do we leverage that more? Or upgrades that attach to allies, whatever the case may be, is usually the space we start with that and then work our way up. But obviously, things can reveal themselves when you're starting from that top-down design of discovering an interesting mechanic that you might end up leveraging in various nuanced ways. But yeah, it's usually you do start with that. Okay, I can picture Storm. What does she do? Probably manipulates weather, right? And so that inspires the weather deck, right? So often you start with that space of like, how do we realize this character? And then it sort of naturally flows down from there.
Yeah, because one of the first steps of a project is figuring out what characters we're using. Because we really design waves around a central theme, a focus on a story that we want to tell, and we figure out which characters we want to include to tell that story. And so really we have those characters first, and from there we have to decide, how are we going to represent this power set in the game?
Yeah, that's a good point that when we do our initial design, it really is, these are the characters we're doing is where we start, right? So we say, this theme is around, the X-Force, right? And so we're going to do those characters. And so we start with the character designs, and then like, what do they do comes later, rather than necessarily having an idea for, ooh, what if we had a hero who does these things? Who fits that role? That is less common. I don't know if we've really done that, but
We've got what we call a slush folder with ideas where we're just doing our day-to-day thing, and it's like, oh, this would be perfect for this character. So I'm just going to set this aside, and when we get to them, this is going in there.
That's very insightful.
we try.
Okay, so I'm sure that there are lots of hurdles that you come across while developing characters or heroes, villains, side or encounter sets, all that kind of stuff. Can you give us some, maybe drill down on some specific design challenges you've had and how you overcame them? If, again, without revealing anything.
Sure.
So maybe Frank might not be able to share this.
I'm actually ready for this question.
Perfect. So yeah, how have you solved those design challenges?
I can go first, actually.
Yeah.
So having designed 4 heroes at this point, I think one thing I found very interesting was, despite that top-down approach of like, I want to realize this character, how did they work? Sometimes that design might lead down a very specific aspect path. And the hard part is I make the pre-con, give it to my testers, and people start trying to build that character outside of that aspect, and it's not really working because the character's so that thing, right? That it's hard to make them feel like they actually work in those other aspects. So I found it, this was Tony's advice, but I found it very helpful to make a card or two that is a hook for that other aspect, so that when you're playing in the other aspect, that's the card you want to make sure comes down, because it's really going to help you do more defending, do more attacking, dealing with side schemes, whatever the case may be. So coming up with those like novel hooks that get you thinking, oh, I really want to build this character in that aspect because, I can use this a bunch of times, that kind of thing.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, that is I think a very important part of the design of this game, is that there are going to be cards that you're not going to use in every deck with this hero. Cards you're not going to emphasize, cards that aren't going to be your first choice to play. But that's okay, because we're giving you those hooks that you can take into other aspects. And so we want you to, when you take a hero to a different aspect, to feel like you're playing them differently. You're not just doing the same things you were doing in the other aspect with a few minor differences.
Mm-hmm. I think the main trap that I run into is making designs so thematic that they're not necessarily good. So I tend to come from the top down too much, and it's like, well, this doesn't do anything. So my main example of that is with Groot. My first design for him was I wanted baby Groot to have to grow for a while. That was the initial growth counter mechanic. Was he starts in alter ego, he has to grow for X amount of time or find X amount of cards until he can graduate to actually being a hero and flip over and do things, engage with the game. And they're and Caleb and Boggs were like, that's so against the ethos of Champions. You need to be able to do things.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't have any drawback that's so bad that it's preventing you from playing the game. So that was kind of a non-starter, that whole growth mechanic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one design that gave me some trouble at first was the Psylocke design. We started out with a design for her that was playing very well, but it was not feeling like Psylocke. And that was the feedback we were getting from our testers. It's like, this is fun, but this isn't this character. And so she was a character we ended up kind of going back to the drawing board on. And ended up with the final design that you all have been playing.
Those are really cool. I didn't know that about Baby Groot.
Many did.
Okay, so this kind of ties off of that. I think that Aaron can probably answer this a little bit. Are there, when it comes to designing specific, well, I guess villain or hero, are there any parts of the game mechanics and card design, not just mechanics, but like the theme of it too, that you're like, I want to dive into this on, or is it a different nut to crack with each hero and villain? And if so, what are you like, I'm going to try this and really dive into this aspect, or this, not aspect is in the
Right.
game of the game, but this
Feature.
idea with this character?
I've got one. With both Next Evolution and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I've had different kind of design goals, things that I've wanted to try out. With Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you may have noticed that there are a number of abilities that the heroes have that exhaust them in alter ego form. And so that was a thing that I wanted to experiment with that wave is what kind of benefit do you need to have in order to want to exhaust while you're in alter ego form? Because normally you're only going down there to use your recovery. And so if you've got a thing that's exhausting you instead, can you afford to do that in the middle of the game when you're running low on HP? And so that's where designs like Maria, where Shuri, even Falcon has a card in his kit that has him exhausting while in alter ego. And so that was kind of a fun way that a fun area of exploration for that wave.
The thing that I've been obsessed with lately mechanically is just the main mechanic of the way the game works. You know, you have a handful of cards and you have to choose which ones to spend for resources and choose which ones to play as cards. And that's the one of the most unique things about Champions in the play style is that hard decision you have to make. So I've been thinking about other ways to leverage that. Like, are there ways that we can choose cards in your hand and tuck them somewhere and kind of put them on the layaway to play them later? Or are there cards that have to be played first, or cards that have to be played last, or cards that care about once you're out of cards in your hand, you know, they can do cooler stuff at the end afterwards. So the sequencing of that and the decision making of that, I think, is the interesting puzzle for Champions play. So like, I'm trying to think of, you know, all the ways that we can to highlight that and steer back into that more. Yeah.
We'll keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
I'd say another feature that I like exploring that I've been able to do so far is trying to delve into new archetypes within aspects. Because we don't want it to always feel like, I'm playing protection, I'm going to be doing this. I'm playing aggression, I'm going to be doing this. Where having playing with, for example, with Justice, we started experimenting a bit with player side schemes and having that as like a new card type and a new thing you could be pursuing. Dealing more with like rewarding you for dealing with minions, or even like trying to find more minions in order to get more treats, basically. So being able to kind of explore beyond what we've already covered for the kind of default, what does this aspect do, making you play with that aspect in a slightly different way, which hopefully makes you want to revisit old characters to explore that new way with that character.
Awesome. So thank you guys for these. These are very thoughtful, insightful answers. And now to wrap up, we have a couple questions that are more fluffy, more fun. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this next one is really insightful. But who is a hero or villain that you think is most emblematic of you as either, or as a designer, or as a player of Marvel Champions?
Do you guys have an answer? Should I go?
Yeah, go for it.
This is a tricky one. I'd say either Domino or Maria Hill. Domino represents my interest in making really crunchy designs where you need to do things in a very specific order in order to get the optimal play, whereas Maria is emblematic of my kind of interest in taking risks with characters, doing something that's never been done, giving a hero who's got no thwart or attack events in their deck, and finding just kind of off the wall ways that we can take the design in the game.
I think as a designer, Groot is probably close to my ethos of playing its own weird mini game, trying to build up and do something cool with that. And as a player, more Iron Man is probably more my jam. But that's a similar thing. I'm a Timmy. I want to
And that you
win
like
more.
building
Yeah.
up.
I want to build up, have a million tech pieces out. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
I think as a player, it might be a contentious choice. I do like War Machine. I think the idea of having those ammo counters as like this auxiliary resource is a really interesting design space. I think that's what I find really enjoyable about Marvel Champions is that you can just do a new thing. Hey, this guy is a new deck. This interacts with this. And so from the designer side, I really like the Kang scenario. This whole like multi-stage event where you're like jumping between locations and you go apart and you come back together. And it just really shows how much you're able to really explore the space. Similarly, the Green Goblin scenario honestly was like what turned me onto this game. I played the core set and I was like, all right, this game's pretty fun. And then that Green Goblin scenario where the villain's able to also go into alter ego, essentially, I was like, this is cool. Like, you can just, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect the villain to also be able to change forms. Like, I don't know, I just felt like it really showed off what this game was capable of and, you know, got me excited about what was coming next.
Thank you, guys. So this last question, this last question, I'm sure that there's lots of people in the audience that would love an answer. Okay? So what are some final items that you can tease about any upcoming releases that you have approval?
Right.
We don't want anyone getting in trouble here.
So I'm really jazzed about the impending release of Falcon and Winter Soldier. They're a great combo. I like playing them together. They have some really fun card designs in their kits, and some spicy aspect cards as well that I'm excited for you all to get your hands on.
Yeah. The product after that hasn't been announced or anything, but we can say that Michael Boggs did it for us. Yeah, that's another Michael Boggs original design. It's superb.
It's amazing. It's incredible. It's uncanny.
And then the product after that is very interesting in that it's not a campaign. It is not a hero. It is not a scenario. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah.
Let's give them another round of applause.